and welcome to a brand new video. Today we have a quite interesting new mysterious case which has also been very requested, and we could say it's relatively recent, so the information may be just what has been revealed at this moment, but I try to go through everything that's known. Remember to follow me on all my social media. You know I have a billion social media accounts, and the most important thing is to subscribe to this channel, activate the bell so it lets you know when I upload a new video. Follow me on Twitch where we see each other almost every day, we play, we have fun, and also follow me on my second channel. Very well, let's begin. The case of TOMAS Bravo. Well, as I've told you, this is a case that happened relatively not so long ago, namely last year. It is quite recent, obviously, compared to the majority of cases that we've done. So today I'm going to tell you about what has been discovered regarding this case. In itself, there's not much biographical information about the boy we're going to talk about, called Tomas Eduardo Bravo Gutierrez. The only information we have about him is that he was a 3-year and 7 months old boy. His mother was Stefania Gutierrez and his dad was Moises Bravo. But that time it is said that the parents had been divorced for some time now, and that's it. There's no many details, as I said, about the boy's life, especially because, as you know, he was very small. It is a very recent case and there's not much talk about his personal life because he really didn't have much time to actually live his life. However, we're going to go straight to the events so we can dive deep into this case. They occurred on February 17 of 2021. His mother takes his son Tomas to his great-uncle's house. This man is called Jorge Escobar, and let's say that he spent that time in that place. There was an area called Caripilun in the Biobío region in Chile. This, according to what it is said, is more of a rural area, an agricultural one. There are many farmer houses and properties from people who work on that side of the land. Their great-uncle's house was like that. It was a rural house, for he also lived from the agricultural and the cattle business, among other things. In that time, they decided to go to that house and stay there for a few days. According to the great-uncle's recollection, around 9:30 p.m., he goes out along with Tomas, who's grabbing his hand. Tomas was wearing an orange jumper, blue pants, and shoes that were a size too small for his age. He goes out with his great-uncle because he had to do some things with the cattle at night. He needed to haul the cattle back down in that time, so they go to a particular area relatively close to the house too. Right then, the great-uncle says that he saw some cows that were out of their pens, so he quickly went for them and asked the kid to stay there for a moment. He would be back in a bit, so he trusted in that, but when he came back around 5 or 10 minutes later, Tomas was nowhere to be found. More or less what he said was the following: "We were holding hands. I had to haul the cows. I left him down there, but when I came back, he wasn't there. I screamed and screamed and he didn't answer. I thought he had gone to the road, but I didn't know." There was a highway nearby, so various hypotheses started to be considered. The kid had gone in that direction, among other things. And the great-uncle took around an hour and a half to tell this to the mother. I mean, to go back to the house and tell her, "Hey, the kid is missing." He says that during that time he kept looking for him everywhere without success. That's how the first call to the police is made, around 9:05 p.m., trying to ask what they could do regarding the situation. But around 9:30 p.m., the mother decides to formally denounce her son's disappearance. Actually, in this case, we can't say they took too long. For that same night, nearing dawn, several rescue teams and people arrived at that area, or well, the surrounding area, to see if they could find Tomas anywhere. Later, I'll tell you more details regarding the search because it's really important to mention them in this case. But they basically looked for him for a very long time. 9 days of searches passed. Many kinds of people were used, many kinds of professionals, many dogs, among other things. They did aerial searches and basically didn't leave one stone unturned in this area, which despite being very remote was searched thoroughly, but they didn't find anything. However, on the 9th day, around 5 kilometers away from where the boy had disappeared, the police found TOMAS' lifeless body lying on the ground. Obviously, they take him to perform their respective autopsy so they can start to evaluate what the kid's cause of death could have been. But after this autopsy, let's say that the case started to turn somewhat complicated and strange for the family. They took around 56 days, namely until April, to present their results, and by that time the cause of death was undetermined. This was very particular because the cause of death and the whole business of the autopsy seemed to have been leaked. It is unknown who leaked the information, but that ended up on the media, and even the family found out first about the cause of death from the media and not from the police. So by that time the cause was undetermined. For according to the body's investigation, there was no sign of a struggle, of defense, of trauma, not even abuse. We know what kind of abuse. And he only had some subtle things like cerebral and pulmonary edema. With that, they started to say that the cause was no longer undetermined, but an accidental death by hypothermia and starvation. So the speculations began, and the people said like, no, so it seems like the boy died while he was probably lost. During those 9 days, he didn't know where to go. He went up and down the mountain. It is unknown, but he basically died from hypothermia and starvation. But obviously, many people, including the mother of course, who had thoroughly investigated the information from this case, said that there were things that didn't fit, that there were very particular things surrounding the investigation. So she petitioned for a new review abroad. According to what she tells in Chile, and it probably happens to in many Latin American countries, there's not a sufficiently advanced technologies to process DNA samples and do many other studies that could determine a cause of death that goes beyond accidental death. So they sent this test abroad, and we'll talk about that later. When I tell you there were some inconsistencies and particular things during the investigation, that's what I'm going to tell you in this moment, so you can understand a little bit about this mother's stance and also other people who don't believe this was just an accident. The mother obviously talks about her son because she knew him. Despite him being a small boy, she was with him for quite some time. She raised him, and she said that he was a kid who was quite smart. She said on many occasions we went to where the cows were and walked around that area many times, and he knew without a doubt the way back to the house. And that place wasn't far away from where he supposedly got lost. So that was something particular for the mother, for she said it's not normal for him to just get lost. On one hand, she started to denounce a series of serious mistakes within the investigation, or the fact that when they were searching during those hours, during those 9 days, there were 2 moments in which the search was abruptly interrupted because of a man. This man has, later we're going to talk more about him, he was a person who stopped the search on 2 occasions, and that you know that the first 48 hours from a search are vital, but he gave 2 false alarms of supposedly having found the body. The first time he said he was with his grandmother on his father's side and that they didn't have to search anymore. But later they said, no, that's not the case, it's a mix-up. He interrupted the search again, saying that they had already found him, that he was very close to the mountain but he was lost. I want to show you this clip in which you can see the moment when the mother is happy and when she hears the news and can't believe it, so they start celebrating. But it wasn't true either. I mean, I don't know why, but they told this news and they were like, oops, no, I think it wasn't him. On the other hand, it is believed that it was very particular, very strange, that the kid could walk 5 kilometers on his own and end up dead in that way. It's like there wasn't a reason, according to many people, for him to walk towards there, that it was impossible for him to do it on his own, and that left many questions. More so, something particular started happening regarding the autopsy. As I've told you, it took a long time for them to deliver that. They delayed it little by little. It was like, no, we're missing this, we're missing that, and so many days, weeks, and weeks passed in which the family asked the police for the information, but there was nothing. They're just delayed and keep delaying the process, which was very strange. Also, when they say that when the body was found, there were like traces of blood, among other things, but also they say that the kid wasn't buried in a specific place. But let's say that he was in a plain view. And there was also an area close to him that looked like it had been dug out. So that begged the question of why, if there was a half-dug son with certain information there, nobody paid attention. As I've told you, the tests were sent abroad, more specifically to the United States, to try and make a more thorough evaluation regarding the DNA, which was very important. According to what they say, the results came back a year later. The results of this autopsy. It seemed like the experts that were in charge of this say that it wasn't an accidental death. Truth to be told, third parties were involved in this tragedy. After that, a storm is unleashed, especially by the family, who denounces the mishandling of the investigation, by the forensic teams and by the police. They started to manipulate many things to erase some evidence or to simply intervene in ways within the investigation, even when they recovered the body and everything. There were many inconsistencies that shouldn't have happened along the process. This has been a constant complaint for many people who knew about this case. But then the people start asking themselves what happened to TOMAS, what happened that night, or well, what happened during those days. Obviously, there were many hypotheses. When at the beginning they weren't able to find him, it was thought that he had been probably kidnapped by someone in a matter of seconds, while his great-uncle went with the cows. Maybe the boy was kidnapped in some way and was being held, or I don't know, maybe hidden in some place really close. When he went back, it was thought, well, when they found the body, it was thought that this probably had happened, but that they ended up leaving him there after being held captive during all those days somewhere. It was also thought that he probably, as he supposedly had walked such a long distance until they found the body, what happened was that he was around that place, moving from one place to another, and he finally tripped or fell, or something that caused that death by blow or by impact. It was also thought that probably some animal was to blame for his death. This was before they found him, for when they found the body, they could tell it wasn't the case. But it was thought that probably an animal had scratched him or something like that, especially because they say that in that specific area there are a lot of cougars, and we all know that this kind of animals are very dangerous. So they were thinking about the possibility that on that night, a cougar was around and it ended his life. But it wasn't like that. And here's when a lot of questions from the family arrived. Obviously, you would say, like, how can this man leave this small child alone? He said, stay there, but no one, despite how careless one is, says no, come with me, it doesn't matter if we take longer. And that was the mother's biggest question. The mother was really concerned with all the situation, because she said to that man, how can you be so careless with my son? I'm trusting him to you, I'm letting you take care of him. You know he is your responsibility. Why did you leave him like that? The mother has doubt a lot. They say that from that moment on, she kept a lot of distance between her and her great-uncle. She didn't understand how it was possible that he had left him alone. And then some things started happening that, according to some people, didn't make much sense. For example, the great-uncle was quite calm after the disappearance. I mean, when this happened, despite everything, the man was like in a very relaxed mood. Like, well, he will turn up. There wasn't a genuine concern like the one the family had. Also, obviously, as many of us know, when one lives in this kind of area where there's not much population, it is like they said, a small town, big hell. This kind of communities know a lot of things about other people. So basically what happened was that many neighbors, days after the body was found, went to Jorge's house, Thomas' great uncle, and started to lynch him. They wanted to kill him because many said that he had something to do with the boy's disappearance. Obviously, many rumors started to go around. Also, Thomas' family on his father's side spoke up. They didn't have a relationship with that man since long ago because they have heard stories about him. It was said that his great-uncle since long ago suffered from alcohol abuse and also from some mental issues, lack of empathy and behaviors like that topic we know about and that I'm not going to mention. Very strange and disturbing behaviors. He had like an alteration in that part of like we know about. It was also very strange, for they say that the day he went missing, he took like an hour to report the mother and say, "Hey, Thomas is missing." And in the meantime, instead of going to tell the mother, he went to a tarot reader from the town to ask her where the boy was. I mean, I know that in some investigation this is very real. You have to know that. And I know it from close sources. The police or the investigations generally and often hire under the table mediums or people related to this kind of gifts to help them with the cases. And sometimes they really help. But why go looking for a person that can tell you where the body is or where the boy is without first looking for him yourself or report him as missing? This just doesn't make sense. Obviously, just when they found the body of this boy near the house, 5 kilometers away, the first person who was arrested was the great-uncle, for he was very suspicious and had things about him that people didn't understand. So they said he's guilty. Despite that, the man was set free because there wasn't enough proof non-suspicious to keep him in jail. So until today, the man is free. And it is involved in a process. What happened there? There was another very strange and particular thing he also did. According to what it is said, from the beginning he was asked to do some DNA tests, to run all kinds of analysis with that. His lawyer says that he gave those samples, that he gave all that for the start of the process, but some months ago when they started doing this analysis from other countries abroad, he was asked to give some hair for more DNA tests. However, he completely refused to give those samples and appealed twice, both times being denied by the court. So he won't have to give the DNA. According to him and his lawyer, he said they didn't see why it was necessary, for he had given samples and that information previously. And also because according to the lawyer, and I didn't understand that very well, he says that these hair analysis tests aren't accurate regarding the DNA. So that could cause confusion. I don't know if this is true or not. Maybe a person who watches us and it is an expert on the topic could know that. But that was the defense, which is very strange. For I said if he had already given the DNA samples to prove if he was him or not, but if you get asked for some more tests and you have nothing to hide, one will give the DNA. Obviously, the people have supported and the investigation too, the hypothesis or what he told about that night, for he can be considered the only witness. But many people are asking themselves if what he told was the truth or if he's changing his version. At some points, there were also contradictions in his version of the events. Often there weren't feelings, especially when they found the body. It seems like the man wasn't affected, and obviously, when the search began, he was the one giving many of the direction of this search. Some people started to think that it was like a sort of manipulation, so the police wouldn't arrive to where the boy was exactly. Why? Because he said, "No, look, it was there and we went this way." So the police started searching that route and investigating that way. But many thought like, What if he's the one who kidnapped him or had him taken in some way, and now he's steering the police away from where the boy was actually kept? As of now, the investigation continues regarding the DNA, which can't reveal yet if he was involved or not, and I feel that's more complicated. I feel like the more time passes, I feel like these cases become more and more difficult to solve and to find a culprit. But here I'm going to tell you briefly about the other person I mentioned who was part of this investigation and that search they did for 9 days. This man was called Jorge Jerez. He was the person in charge of the 2 delays in the boys' search. During those 9 days, especially during the first 48 hours, it was his fault that the investigation stopped. He supposedly was one of the leaders from this group of rescuers, and many people don't understand why he did that, of first making up that the kid was with his grandmother, and when he said they had found him. Some people started to investigate this man's past and found really interesting things. Like for example, when there were some forest fires some years ago in Chile, he introduced himself as a rescue doctor and said that he was the only one authorized to perform many labors. And he also asked for money donations to the persons who come close to help. One time he also said that he understood the pain of the families because he had lost his son on some occasion and that they could find him again, which was completely false, for he didn't go along with his children. And he even was going through a judicial process with his family. This generated a lot of interest in him, but we haven't seen much regarding that. It hasn't been talked about a lot, but we do wonder about the reason for this situation. Another person who was suspected by many people also appeared, called Guillermo, or nickname Memo, who was a man that already resided or lived close by and had some previous criminal record. However, the man was interviewed and he said he hadn't been even close that night and that he had nothing to do with that. He was ready to help in whatever they needed him to, so according to what I saw of him in the interviews and all that, I think he's telling the truth. And that's how many gossips and investigative failures have come to the light. The mother has been sad on many occasions, for she found out about the investigation without the police telling her. She also assures that they tell her many lies regarding a lot of things. They also tried to close the case on some occasion. She also denounced that 4 months passed before the expert reviewer of the clothes and there were no results. There was also obviously the theory that he went to the highway and probably some car ran him over. Then they picked up the body to not be found guilty, but actually I don't think any of this is real. Nowadays it is said that there's a total of 6 expert reviewers happening abroad to see what kind of results they find. But let's say that the family assures that they lost their entire trust in the judicial system, while the great uncle that for many is the culprit is still free. Or the same for the person that had to do with this, that is still out there free, not taking responsibility for the crime he committed. That's where the case is for now. It's been a year since then, and you can feel the family's frustration, the sadness of not going forward, but there aren't a lot more details. Eventually, if the case keeps going forward, remember that I'll include it in the case actualization. But for now, this is today's video. I hope you like it a lot. If so, don't forget to leave a like or a thumbs up. Also, comment what you think and what you feel about this case. Follow me on all my social media. You know I have a billion social media accounts. Subscribe to this channel and activate the notification bell so it lets you know when I upload a new video. Thank you for watching me. Don't forget to follow your dreams and I'll see you on the next one.